aren't here yet, they can always watch the recording. All right. Welcome everybody to Sustainable Builders Alliance 29th webinar, the C word and getting off the gas. My name is Hamish White, one of the founding members of Sustainable Builders Alliance and directors of Sanctum Homes, and I'll be your host for this evening. In the spirit of reconciliation, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Today we are joined by Jeremy McLeod, who is the founding director of Breathe Architecture, a sustainable practice recognised with over 20 Australian Institute of Architects awards. He is the recipient of the 2018 Victorian President's Prize and the AIA's 2016 Leadership in Sustainability Prize. Jeremy is also co-founder of Nightingale Housing and head of partnerships at Goodbye Gas. He believes through collaboration can push industry and government to do better for a country in a housing and a climate crisis. Alongside Jeremy, we're excited to have Ben Russell and Marcella Palmer from Goodbye Gas. Ben is one of the founders and directors of Goodbye Gas. He is a qualified A-grade electrician and founder and managing director of a successful electrical contracting business, Brett, which has been operating for 11 years. Ben works with some of the best architects and builders in Melbourne on high-quality, sustainable buildings at all scales. He joined forces with other industry leaders to establish Goodbye Gas in 2022, to offer an integrated, effortless service for households to electrify their homes. Marcella is trained in architecture with a master's degree from Monash University and 8 years of experience in the field. Marcella is now applying her deep understanding of sustainable buildings to Goodbye Gas, where she leads service delivery, including customer service and partner coordination. Marcella is also a part of the team at Breathe, Australia's leading sustainable architecture practice. He primarily works in shaping the vision, mission and sustainability goals of Breathe, with an emphasis on addressing the housing crisis. In this webinar, we'll delve into crucial topics such as reducing carbon footprint, exploring effective strategies for a greener future, moving away from gas, discussing alternatives and sustainable solutions, collaboration from impact, how working together can influence the industry and government in addressing the dual crisis of housing and climate. We aim to not only discuss the challenges, but also focus on real actionable solutions to the carbon, climate and industry issues we face. Today's webinar is brought to you by one of our platinum sponsors, Sustainability Victoria. Sustainability Victoria are a delivery agency of the Victoria State Government. They develop and deliver sustainable development programs that help deliver ambitious emissions and waste reduction targets for 2030 and onwards towards net zero by 2050. You can check out more of what these guys do at www.sustainability.vic.gov.au. All right, the information that you're about to receive is based on the experience of the presenters and may not relate to your situation. If you'd like more specific advice, please get in touch via email. Now, Jeremy, I'm going to throw over to you now, and you can talk about the C word.
Thanks very much, Hamish. It's not the C word that you might be thinking. I know that you're a builder, so it's not that one. It's about carbon. But I'd also like to say, just for clarification, the Victorian President's Prize that I got was for the president of the Institute of Architects. Victoria is only a state in Victoria. We're still not a republic. We're actually a monarchy, so it's not the president, unfortunately. But anyway, wouldn't that be good? I'm on Wurundjeri country today. Breed was founded on Wurundjeri country, and no doubt that Benji and Marchie will be talking about Goodbye Gas on Wurundjeri country. So anyway, let's get started. So what's the problem, and why do we care as a group of architects or builders about carbon? So if we think about, that we operate in the time of a climate crisis, it's the biggest threat that we've ever faced, as a species, as humans. And what do we do about it? And we know that carbon is the biggest problem of our time. I've got some good news and some bad news for you today. The bad news is that as a sector, buildings, the built environment makes up for 37% of the total global carbon emissions. So congrats, as an industry, we're responsible for over a third of all carbon. So that's the bad news, crew. The good news is that we can actually solve 2/3 of that carbon footprint problem tomorrow. In fact, we can solve it today and relatively effortlessly. So let's go and do that because we're in a climate crisis, and let's assume that all of us give a shit about the planet that we live on. So the last 10% of our carbon, we can talk about how to solve that. It's a bit harder, but we're going to talk about the things that we can do towards that. And Marchie and Benji are going to talk about, this big chunk of the pie, right? The 2/3. I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but I'm also going to talk about this 1/3 and what we can do in the built environment to impact change, real meaningful change in everything that we do. So what's the solution? So zero operational carbon solves our 2/3 issue, and then cut embodied carbon to solve, part of our kind of 1/3 issue of carbon. So zero operational carbon, that's that big 27% of all global emissions. Operational carbon is the energy that we use to heat our water, to heat our homes, to run our computers, our fridges, our air conditioners, our cooktops. So how do we solve operational carbon? And 3 steps, it's pretty easy. Number 1, electrify everything. No more gas, not ever. I'm sure there'll be some plumbers out there watching. Don't panic. There's plenty of other work for you to do. And for Sparkies, it's good news for you. And for builders, when you're talking to your clients and they want to plumb gas into their building in 2023, I think you should just ignore that. That time has come and gone. The only way that we get to net zero emissions is 1, we electrify everything. And then 2, so that solves our kind of our demand side. And then 2, we look at what are our energy sources on the other side. And so how do we make sure that they're renewable? And it doesn't have to be renewables on site. It can be off-site renewables. So step 1, everyone, no more gas. And the great thing is that the state government's just made it easier in Canberra and Victoria. So any new buildings, no more gas. We just need the rest of the states to catch up. Queensland, come on, get with the times. All right, so how do we do that? So importantly, hot water takes up about 40% of our energy in each household. So you change that out for a heat pump. Places like Victoria are currently offering incentives, financial incentives to change out that. So Benji, Marchie, what's the rebate on for a heat pump hot water in Victoria at the moment?
It may be like up to $2,000.
Okay, great. So you get $2,000 to change out your gas hot water to a high efficiency heat pump. Heat pump is way more efficient, so 40% more efficient than gas. The most efficient way to heat and cool your house is using high efficiency air conditioning. So for heating and cooling, so reverse cycle. And again, specify a system that uses the right refrigerants in that system. So use it's a bit techie, but just ask for greenhouse warming potential gases in there of less than 670. We can talk about that later. But any day of the week, air conditioning is the right way to heat and cool your places, not ducted. And we can talk about that later as well. Induction cooking, again, 40% more effective, more efficient than gas, and it doesn't give off toxins inside buildings that are required to be more tightly sealed than ever before. So as the National Construction Code says that we need to increase building thermal efficiency, we need to seal up our buildings tighter. We want to make sure that we're not filling our buildings with toxins coming out of the byproduct of burning gas inside the house. So induction cooking. Heat pumps, I'm not guaranteeing or warranting any of these products. This is just what we specify at Breathe after, years of research. So we specify Stiebel Eltron. for houses, domestic projects, and we specify automatic heating for commercial projects like apartments, office buildings. This is just to help your crew, anyone that's looking at this. For appliances, best-in-class carbon-neutral appliances, VZUG, they're expensive, but they're the best. In terms of sustainability, I'm talking about. Miele are a carbon-neutral company, and there are other companies that are looking to go carbon neutral, but the important thing is that you're buying 100% electric. But if you've got a very wealthy client, look at VZUG instead of Gaggenau. Solar power, obviously put batteries on, put panels on everything that you're doing if you can. Put EV charging in. And the funny thing about EV charging is that you don't need three-phase energy supply. So I've had a EV for over 18 months. I've only supercharged it 4 times. Apart from that, I'm just charging it out of a normal power point in my garage every night, trickle charging it. My Tesla will allow me to schedule the time in which I charge. So I charge after 10 p.m., which means I've got a 2-step off-peak power, which means I'm buying my power super cheap to be able to power my Tesla. So it costs me, I drive about 600 kilometers a week, and it costs me about $25 a week in electricity to drive my car. So it's a lot cheaper than your diesel for your car. Look at battery storage and look at virtual power plants. We can talk about the great thing about that later. So step 1, electrify everything. We all understand that. There's no pathway to net zero with gas, so don't do it. Step 2, 100% renewables. So if you can't put solar on the building that you're building, or it's an apartment building, you can't put enough solar for the use the amount of usage you've got. The other thing to think about is, where do you buy your power from? So the 3 biggest electricity companies in our country, AGL, Energy Australia, and Origin, are also the 3 biggest emitters. So they're also like the 3 biggest polluters in terms of carbon. So think about where you buy your energy from and what type of energy you buy. And you can educate not just yourselves in terms of what you buy for your businesses, but also for your clients. So you can talk to your clients about this. So we buy from Momentum. So that's their parent company is Tasmanian Hydro. But there's a green electricity guide that you can get on www.greenelectricityguide.com, and you can see what's the most sustainable electricity company. But the important thing is that you buy 100% certified green power. That's not a product. That's an independently audited power supply chain audited by the government, which is you've probably never heard of it because it's a government scheme. But basically it forces large-scale generators to invest in large-scale renewables. So maximize on-site solar, buy 100% certified green power. Again, for my house, we buy 100% certified green power. That costs us an extra 4.5 cents a kilowatt hour. Costs me about $4.90 a week on average, which is, depending on where you're buying your coffee, it's about 1 coffee a week. So you can do it. Don't be scared off by thinking green power is super expensive. It's not, and it's really important. And then if you're doing apartments, think about using an embedded energy network to be able to bulk buy your power and commit it to green power. So for our embedded energy networks, we try to make sure that we're buying from a company like Momentum that has 100% renewables in their mix, and we buy 100% green power. And then we work with companies like B Energy or Super, SUPA, or Metropolis to be able to build that embedded energy network, wholesale or bulk buy the 100% green power. And then with that saving from those bulk buy purchases, pass on those savings to the residents. Number 3, certification. Again, I don't know how helpful this will be for the residential architects, for the single res architects, for the single res builders. But if you're working on multi-residential building, it's really, really easy to get a community of people to get the benefits of bulk buying 100% green power. And then you just lock in that green power in the Owners Corp rules and an annual carbon audit into the Owners Corp rules. A couple of boring things. I'll share this with Hamish so that we can, if anyone is interested in what do the owners corporation rules look like and how do you write in a couple of paragraphs into the owners corporation rules to lock in 100% green power in perpetuity, carbon neutral in operation in perpetuity. So pretty easy, pretty boring. This is some of the things that we should be thinking about working in the built environment, about how do we make the most impactful change. And sometimes it's not designing anything, or it's not building anything, it's writing a couple of paragraphs into owners corporation rules. Also, size matters. So think about what you're building and how big it needs to be. I mean, it's interesting as an architect working in Australia, we've got some of the biggest housing in the world. So on average, 230 or 227 square meters. So our housing on average is bigger than the United States and bigger than Canada, but our household occupancy is very low. So since the 1950s, our house sizes have more than doubled, but our household numbers have halved. So we're basically living in 4 times as much space as we were in the 1950s, but we're still the same size humans. We've also got one of the biggest carbon emissions per capita in the world. So if you want to build something beautiful and something great, I can't stress enough how important it is to get the design right. So work with a great architect. Doesn't have to be Breathe. Just work with a great architect or a great designer. Design the right size house. Design what people need, not necessarily what they want or what they think they need. You know, so for example, you know, you can deliver an epic family home, you know, at 180 square meters, and it doesn't need to be 350 square meters. And what is that? Why would you want to do that as a builder? All right, I'm going to sell it to you from a capitalist's perspective. You charge more per square meter. You build better quality. You build something that you're super proud of. You give the client something that they want. You give them super low operational carbon. You give them super low embodied carbon. And then everyone will see it and go, that's incredible. And then you get lots of work in the future. You know, if you just build a big flabby house and you've got to value manage everything to try and solve that with size, it will be a big ordinary thing. Do something that's the right size and something that's exceptional. And then send me a photo so that I can give you the thumbs up. And then thermal efficiency. So the great thing about, you know, if you're doing something the right size, it means that you can spend the right amount of time and money and dedication on getting the thermal efficiency right. So, you know, and solving, you know, all of those thermal issues. So let's talk about embodied carbon. So obviously the big thing, size matters, you know, get the size right. That's the biggest way that you can cut embodied carbon. So this is that 10% slice of the pie. So one, reductionism. So make it smaller, you know. And I'm not saying make it small, I'm saying make it smaller. I'm not saying make it small, I'm saying make it efficient and make it great. Like, you know, a flabby plan does not make for a beautiful home. So one is reductionism. So one might be size, but another thing might be about the materiality that you approach to that. Size matters. When we do apartment buildings, we share amenities. So we might have a shared rooftop laundry, a shared dining space, a shared rooftop kitchen, a shared bathhouse, a shared workspace, shared vegetable gardens. So you can share all of those things, which means you don't have to replicate that 40 times in each apartment. I'm saying that each apartment still needs a kitchen and a bathroom, but you can have additional space on that. Material reductionism. So what are the materials that we build with that have the biggest carbon footprints? So cement, steel, and aluminium. And when I say cement, I'm not saying concrete, I'm saying cement. So you can buy concrete with cement replacement in it. So you can look at something like a Wholesome EPAC Zero, which is zero carbon concrete. You can look at different ways to deal with concrete, but you can also design concrete out of a home. And what does that mean for you as a builder? It probably saves you on program time. With the concreters out there, don't panic. You can still use concrete. just think about cement replacement and where you get your cement from. So look at Wholesome EPAC zero carbon concrete. Steel, if you can build everything out of timber, timber pulls carbon out of the air as it grows. When you build with it and it becomes framing for your home, for your walls, for your roof, you're locking that carbon up, you're sequestering that carbon out of the atmosphere and putting it into your home. So design out steel, think about how, and if your architect isn't doing it, tell them to go back and try again and try harder. There's nothing, we can build 20-story buildings in timber. We can build a house without steel. It's not that hard, right? And then aluminium. So aluminium is an incredible material, but it's also incredibly energy intensive. So 6 times as much carbon intensity in aluminium, the same size as a piece of steel. So there's a new LU spec have a low carbon aluminium coming out of New Zealand because it's made from renewable electricity. But also think about where you use aluminium. So where is it really good? It's good on windows, for example, or cladding the outside of windows if it's thermally broken, because it doesn't rust, it doesn't rot. So you might use aluminium for that. But when you get inside the house where it's out of the weather, does it need to be aluminium or can it be timber? So think about where you need it and use it only where you need it and not where, you can't think of a easier way to do that detail. So anyway, think about the materials and the choices that you make on the way through building. 2, and again, this is probably more for architects than builders, but, we do know, some great builders out there that are measuring the carbon. So basically, it should be incumbent on all architects now to undertake a life cycle assessment line for their building using concrete, steel, aluminium. And then what happens when they start designing out those things and replacing it with timber, when they replace different parts of the building or look at a smaller building. So they get to measure against a baseline, and then they get to look at how do we reduce our carbon in the buildings. And we need to measure so we can understand how do we get to zero. So this is kind of the key. And also, if we are building carbon into our buildings, what do we do about that amount of carbon we're putting in? How do we solve for that? Either with a positive energy house or something that solves for that carbon over the life of that building's existence. So life cycle assessment. So there are a number of different ways to do it. We use a company called the Carbon Reduction Institute to measure carbon for us. We work with consultants like Finding Infinity, Pangolin, and RLB are cost planners. So for us architects, historically, they just measure the cost of buildings, and now they're also measuring carbon. We use software in our office called One Click LCA and eTool to measure carbon. And then number 3, zero carbon materials. And I think that this is the bit that I think would be pretty helpful for builders, trying to solve for clients that aren't necessarily, they don't want to change the way that they do things, but you have a solution for them that means that they can do what they've always been doing, but where the suppliers have handled their carbon through their manufacturing process and they've handled it upstream. So I'm just going to list off a few of the carbon neutral materials that we use. My practice managers made me put this disclaimer in. Basically, we don't warrant or guarantee any of these products. Basically, if you choose to specify any of these materials, this is what we specify. But if you choose to do it, it's your decision, not mine. You take responsibility, not me. So concrete, we use Wholesome EPAC Zero. So it's zero carbon concrete. It's incredible. Bricks, we use Brickworks carbon neutral bricks. There's also Kraus bricks manufactured in Victoria. And the Brickworks carbon neutral bricks have Daniel Robertson's bricks out of Tasmania. And they've got bricks manufactured in Wollert, 22 kilometres north of where I'm sitting now. Appliances, VZUG have a carbon neutral line. There are a couple of other, and VZUG have also are also exiting any gas appliances in Australia by 2030. So they're the first appliance manufacturer to say we're not going to be selling any appliances past 2030. So watch that space. But they are expensive. So look at, this is for your high-end clients. So look at, other, Miele are a carbon neutral company at least. And I think that SMEG are a carbon neutral company, or they're going carbon neutral. Petitions. So have a look at DuraPanel. This is an incredible product. It's a carbon positive product. So it takes straw stubble from kind of wheat fields, the stuff that usually gets burnt after you've harvested all the wheat. It gets compressed into a 55mm board. It's got paper facing just like plasterboard, and it's carbon positive, which means that you can use that to replace or to actually pull more carbon out of the atmosphere than what your building's taking up. So this can offset things like your aluminium, your cement, and your steel. So DuraPanel, check it out. It's heavy. It's really, really good for the planet. And you're a bunch of smart builders, so you'll be able to sort that out. Magnesium oxide board. Instead of using fiber cement sheet, this is basically mineral product board, which means at the end of this, at the building's life, or with the leftover of your magnesium oxide board, you can basically crush it up and put it in your soil, and it'll break down over time. And the components, the minerals in that magnesium oxide board, depending on the board that you get, just break down in soil and are good for plants. So it's got a great end of use. Save board. This is recycled soy milk cartons, almond milk cartons, oat milk cartons, those Tetra Pak, compressed into board. It's just like MDF, and you can use it even in wet areas, right? So it's wet area approved. So it takes a waste stream and turns it into, basically an MDF alternative. So no virgin products in that. Flooring. We use a lot of cork flooring, and a company that uses cork called EnviroSpray. We use EnviroSpray for acoustic reasons. You can clad buildings in it. The cork flooring, we use like 12 to 15 mil solid cork flooring. You can get it pre-finished. It's great for apartments because it solves for impact noise and airborne sound noise between floors. Cork is also the bark on a tree. So as you peel that off, it sequesters carbon out of the air, but the tree stays there and the tree lives on. And then a couple of years later, you can do it again. So cork is very, very good in terms of carbon reduction. And then we use recycled floorboards. We specify a lot of floorboards from Urban Salvage in Spotswood. Andy Miner knows more about timber than anyone else I know in the industry. So we specify floorboards from them. We top nail our floorboards, not glue them. And why do we do that? So that firstly, the glue doesn't off-gas and kill the occupants, particularly in a tightly insulated house. But secondly, at the end of the building's life, that floor can be lifted once again and have a whole nother life. So think about, how do you disassemble the building? How do you take out adhesives and just use mechanical fixing? So if you could take adhesives off all of your building sites and just use, screws, for example, think about what that would be like at the end of the building's life. You could theoretically pull everything apart and you don't have stud adhesive holding things together that you can't ever use again. That's just got to go to landfill. Interiors, we use fabric suppliers, Sustainable Living Fabrics. Decton is a benchtop material that's carbon neutral. Ortex, New Zealand company, make carbon neutral insulation and carbon neutral acoustic insulation. Tapware, there's a Melbourne company called Sussex that makes their tapware out of 100% recycled brass. They've got a massive solar array on their roof, and they've got carbon neutral tapware line. Novus make stainless steel tapware, and all of that is carbon neutral. So either of these two suppliers, you can specify those. And then what's the impact? What we want to do ideally is if we could build a zero carbon building, reducing our cement, reducing our steel, reducing our aluminium, adding in cork, DuraPanel, timber. And then if we could make that all electric, and then if we could buy that electricity that's powered by 100% certified green power and augmented by some solar on the roof, then congratulations. If we all do that, we've solved 37% of our global carbon emissions. We've all got to do that, and we've all got to do it now. So all of us architects have to act, but we would also ask that all of you builders help us. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Jeremy. I'm frantically taking notes down as we're going with all these products that you've been talking about. I have actually tried to get DuraPanel on this webinar. I'm definitely going to try and reach out to him again. And if you've got a connection for Enviro Spray Cork, I would love to leverage off that as well. We've actually had the guys from Wholesome in on one of these webinars before. So if anyone is interested, they can jump on our website and grab a look at that webinar. I think we did it late 21. And we recently had them on our Sustainable Builders Yak podcast as well. So if anyone's interested, definitely check that out. Again, all that information is on our Sustainable Builders Yak, Sustainable Builders Alliance website. Now I'm going to throw over to Ben and Marcella to talk about Goodbye Gas and the amazing things that these guys are doing to fuck gas right off.
That's
we should have called it that.
That's a good business name.
Thanks, Haim, and great preso, Jez, as always. Yeah, so we started Goodbye Gas about 18 months ago, I think. Yeah, we had one goal in mind, really, but that was to electrify the country. And I guess for all those reasons that Jeremy's just spoken about, we need to do it as quickly as possible. So what we do at Goodbye Gas is offer, a seamless end-to-end service to help people, remove gas and electrify, all the appliances in their homes. So yeah, similar to a way that, you as a builder would do that. You would coordinate the trades on a building site. We would coordinate the trades and, organise that changeover of the old gas appliances to new efficient electric ones.
Amazing. Marcella, how do you guys roll all that out from a business point of view?
Like Jeremy said before, it is in 3 simple steps as well. So we usually start with a home visit or a video call with a client. And so we'll go through all their gas appliances in their home. So your cooktop, your hot water, heating and cooling. And then we go away and we put together a quote. We send that out. For quotes accepted, then we go ahead and electrify everything for them. So we'll order all the parts, organize all the trades, and just make it as easy as possible. We'll organize an installation date with them as well. And then we also offer support at the end of the installation. So if they have any issues, they can just get straight in touch with us and we help them out.
Have you guys, I'm kind of just thinking of questions as they come to me, so I'm just going to throw them at you. Have you guys got like a rough figure, a rough estimate of what it would cost for someone to electrify their home? So if I've got a gas-fired instantaneous hot water system, I've got a gas cooktop, and just to throw in there, I've got gas central heating, but I want my house to be nice and warm. I want hot water like that, and gas, it cooks everything so quickly, so I don't want to be waiting there for 20 minutes while my water boils. So convince me, and how much is it going to cost me?
Okay, we'll say that you're an easy home.
Yeah, I'm an easy client, trust me.
Easy client, easy home. So we'd definitely replace your instant hot water with a heat pump. We usually specify Stiebel Eltron. They've been making heat pumps since the 70s, so they know everything and they're amazing. That can usually cost, depending on the size of your house, between $3,000 and $4,000, and you can get between $2,000 to almost up to $2,500 in rebates on those. That's quite good.
Sorry, is that $2,000 the cost to consumer? So if there wasn't the rebate, would they be more than that?
They'd be more than that.
Okay.
Yeah. We would sort the rebates as well, and give that as an upfront discount to the homeowner.
Yep.
Then your gas cooktop, we'd switch with induction always. Induction is so quick at boiling water. It's insane. Yeah, it's amazing. So we'd switch that with an induction cooktop. We'd wire it in for you. Depending on how big your cooktop is, it can cost between $3,000 and $5,000 to do that, including installation. And then there are no government incentives on cooktops at the moment, but it sounds like we've got some VEECs coming in next year, which is amazing. So hopefully there are some government incentives on that too. And then central ducted, we'd usually recommend just getting rid of it and putting in split systems. It's generally more cost effective to do it that way. And split systems, they have a range of costs, but they range between $2,500 to $4,500 depending on the size of the system. And then there are government incentives on those as well, so you can get like a few $100s off those systems too.
Is it each unit or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's per decommission, and then for every unit after that. And then that price kind of varies. But yeah, that's kind of what you're looking at.
And being the passive house builder that I am, and I'm trying to manage all my air leakages. If we're taking off all your ducted central heating, and all of a sudden we've got these big return air holes, and we've got holes in our floor and stuff like that, do you guys help facilitate trades to help patch up those holes in the floor, or holes in the walls, or holes in the ceilings, or anything like that?
Yeah, we can absolutely. We don't do it personally, but we can absolutely put people in touch with people who can plaster your house up, help seal it as well. Yeah.
If you did want to do, like, if there are some customers that did want the ducted back again, we can do a replacement if there's a full home, but you have to upgrade the ducts. So yeah, it can get quite expensive. Probably for a change of a match, I think it might be, I don't know, is it about 15 grand or something like that? Or
Yeah.
do that? Yeah, something like that. But yeah, there's no patching involved if you went that way, so you could just reuse those existing holes.
But moving air is just a bad way to move heat and cool, right? Moving. The great thing about splits, obviously the cassette heads aren't the most beautiful thing, but you're moving. You're moving something the refrigerant's a much denser product, so you're not getting all that heat loss, or so it's way more efficient.
Yeah.
Awesome. And you guys are operating in Victoria. You did say, Ben, that you had a goal to electrify Australia. Or is that something that you're going to branch out into state for all the interstate listeners here?
Yeah, hopefully, like that's the goal. We wanted to make sure that, Victoria is the worst for gas consumption in the country, so it's the perfect place to start. But yeah, once we fine tune this and work out the processes and kind of the way forward, I think helping everyone in Australia would be awesome, but we'll have to work that out in time, I guess.
And I'm assuming you're going to offer other hot water systems other than Stevel, because there are a few other really good ones on the market as well.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. Yeah, there's obviously great heat pumps out there as well. I think just the all-in-one for us and the retrofit market, I feel like it makes a lot of sense, especially when we're working in, Brunswick, Fitzroy, like, tight little spaces. Yeah. So the all-in-one's great. It plugs into a PowerPoint. It only uses 550 watts. So there's no new circuit. Super easy.
You don't have to hardwire the run a new circuit. Okay. Oh, that makes a lot of sense then, doesn't it?
Yeah. So you'll still have an isolator on it, or a PowerPoint that is an isolator. But we don't need to run a new circuit because there's not a massive element in there that can kick in all the time. So yeah, super cheap. But there are obviously other great heat pumps out there.
I think what I've seen from Goodbye Gas, Hamish, is that it's about simplifying it for, obviously you've got a particular cohort that you guys, would solve very specific, very boutique solutions for. Goodbye Gas is kind of narrow focus, but absolutely kind of laser focus on what they're doing. So if you think about, their customer base, it's people who live in cities, who live very, very busy lives and don't know how to, or don't want to be involved in managing a series of trades. Like, they don't want to have to manage an electrician, a plumber, multiple trades to come in, an AC installer. They don't want to be able to do all that. And so the Goodbye Gas team, as far as I understand it, Marcella, is that they just make it, the whole process, super effortless for the end user to try and bring down that friction point for them, to say it's just too much of a headache for me.
Yeah. No, don't
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. I think that the business model is incredible. I mean, Ben and I have talked about this on a number of occasions. I think the market's massive as well. You know, I
Yeah.
think you guys prepare
I
yourself to
mean,
be pretty bloody busy over the next few years as gas has taken off as gas becomes more expensive and is not something that's on our new builds.
yep.
Now I've got a few questions here, which I can throw to anyone here on the panel. If anyone does have any questions, please by all means throw them in the chat here. So Brian, one of our directors, has asked. You mentioned construction/residents are responsible for 37% of carbon footprint. Do you have any information how Australia individually performs with respect to this?
Yeah, we're bloody horrible. So we are Australia per capita is the worst carbon emitter in the OECD. So, you know, of all the oil producing nations, we are the worst, except for the Middle East countries, you know, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. But worse, we've got a bigger carbon footprint per capita than the United States, bigger carbon footprint per capita than Canada, a bigger carbon footprint per capita than the UK. So a whole bunch of other wealthy nations, we're the worst. So yeah, Brian, we're bad.
Now this next question kind of made me. I didn't know. I'm going to say I didn't laugh at this one, but it is prominent because Brian and I were looking at something around this today, just around the electromagnetic fields that allegedly induction cooktops emit, and just keen to hear from all of you three here what your thoughts are on EMFs with respect to induction cooktops.
Yeah, I can kick off if you like. So I'm an architect, so I get paid, you know, I can argue I get paid the least in a construction of an apartment building, but I'm the one with the biggest professional indemnity insurance and the biggest risk. We work with electrical consultants on all of our projects. And then we have risk registers from our development managers, project managers, and developers, like, you know, Lend Lease and Stockland when I'm working on apartment buildings that don't want to take any risk. So all of our electrical engineers have looked at this time and time again, because this question comes up time and time again. And everyone is satisfied that that there is little to no risk to EMF. And then we've heard about people, you know, anecdotally about people with pacemakers leaning over their induction cooktop while their induction cooktop is on 10, and they've taken the pot off and they've just put their pacemaker hard up against the induction cooktop and they've had a stinger. So I haven't seen any documented evidence of that. But I'm satisfied, you know, and I care deeply. So I've never specified vinyl flooring inside my building ever. Even when we're working on a childcare or a school facility, because of the plasticizers in vinyl. And I've been nervous about renal failure or renal disease in children. You know, we've never specified engineered stone. You know, so as architects, we take human health pretty seriously. And I think that what's the real issue around human health? And it's about off-gassing from gas cooktops inside housing. It's about gas from wall furnaces inside, you know, inside housing. And it's about mold and condensation inside poorly ventilated, tightly sealed houses. So does human health issues exist around EMF from induction cooktops? I think that if you look at it on a risk register and on a risk matrix and how high is the risk compared to the only other alternative, which is gas, it's infinitely smaller. So maybe it exists, but I'm satisfied that it's not a serious health risk.
Ben or Marcella, do you have anything to add to that?
Not really. I mean, I guess I don't have any research on it or anything like that about comparisons, but I think yeah, obviously you'll have to just compare a gas, you know, a methane cooktop to EMF and work out which one would be worse. And yeah, I wouldn't know, but I would be satisfied, as Jeremy said, that I think it's definitely the preferred option rather than the methane.
Thank you. Well answered. This is in reference to when you're talking about the size of a home, Jeremy. And there actually seems to be a bit of a running theme when we have architects come on here. And, you know, it's something that we believe in at Sanctum Homes is just building enough, building what you need. Brian, again, has asked a question about, is there any guide for size per person that could be applied here when trying to reduce the size of a home?
Yeah, a really good question, Brian. So if in 1955, when you lived in 100 square meter homes on average, and there was on average 4 people living in those homes, you know, you would say that the average allowance of square meterage per person was 25 square meters per person. So, you know, if we translated that forward today, and the average occupant size of a house is, well, the average occupancy is whatever that is, 2.2. You know, if you multiply 2.2 by 25, you're going to get to 110 square meters. I don't reckon many people are going to build at 110 square meters, but you know, when I design apartments, you know, I'm designing 1-bedroom apartments at 50 square meters, 2-bedroom apartments are between 65 and 75 square meters, and 3-bedroom apartments at 90 square meters. And, you know, and with great kind of lived outcomes. We're also building studio apartments. And in fact, some of the greatest studio apartments in our city in Melbourne were built in 1935 by Best Overend, and they're 24.1 square meters. Interestingly, 24.1 square meters, 1936. Those apartments, Cairo apartments, check them out online. They're going for a bomb now because people are desperate to live in them because they're great. So, yeah, I think that we could comfortably live in 24 or 25 square meters per person. But, you know, I think that, yeah, currently, what are we at 100 square meters per person? So I feel like, you know, yeah, if you're doing a house somewhere, if you arrive at 50 square meters per person, I reckon you've got 100% contingency in there for people to live comfortably. If you're designing an apartment, it seems to be, you know, that's our metric: 50 for 1s, 75s for 2s, and 90s for 3s.
Makes you think about some of the houses that we've got under construction at the moment, actually.
But we do have to talk about the fetishization of housing in our industry, right? Everyone reads house magazines, everyone looks at Instagram, everyone sees these things, and the people that can afford these houses are, you know, the wealthiest kind of 5%, you know, in our society, you know. So it's pretty interesting. Like 95% of housing is delivered by volume builders, you know, draftees, you know, land subdivision developers. So we're all working on 5% of the housing. And I think it's important that we start to set the example of what that housing should look like.
I think I was on a panel with Stephen Welsh not that long ago, and I think he was telling us that he had a house at 160 square meters, which is about 90 square meters less than the average home in Australia. And he's got both his kids plus partners living in that home, and everyone lives in it harmoniously. So it just goes to show you can have 6 people living in a 160 square meter home. You know, and he talks about living really well. So really great taps and really great bench tops and really great basins, and just having the really nice things, and not just spending it on, I think, like what you call a big flabby house. I just jotted that down here because I really love that term. Yeah, thanks for that, Jeremy. I've got another few questions here. Do you have any advice on what to look out for if we are changing over from steel to a timber structure? And are there any negatives that we can design for this in advance?
Well, I mean, if you talk to Yost, who's doing some incredible work on, you know, his kind of food positive house and things, Yost uses light gauge steel, not hot rolled steel. So he uses, you know, what would be the equivalent of BlueScope's true core steel. And his view is that from a circular point of view, that at the end of the building's life, that can be recycled, and everything's kind of componentized. I would prefer to use timber because I think that while Yost is right, you can recycle that in 90 years' time or 50 years' time. our immediate problem is carbon in the atmosphere now, and we have to shape that down immediately. So timber is the best way to do that. So what do you need to look out for? I think that you need to be, again, it's around design, right? So if it's a 2-story house, try and solve your load paths, but I think, I mean, the light timber framing manual tells you everything you need to know, really. I mean, and it's pretty interesting what we can do with large spans with small sections of timber, right? Historically, that would be a truss, but today, we're getting kind of smaller and smaller sections of timber put together in glue laminated beams with really, really good spans and really good kind of dimensional stability. So yeah, I think there's not much you can't do with glue lam or CLT or trusses, or posi struts that that I think that engineers just automatically go to steel. And I think that all of us should brief our engineers by saying, no steel, solve it in timber. And then we just need to think about, what are those junctions? How does this all work? And where do our load paths go? And maybe, do we need to think about, breaking some of those epic spans, with some structure, God forbid, and there's, so that's, and you can do that in a really elegant way as designers and builders.
This is from Shiva. What about XCEM Alpha Panel? Have you heard of that? I think this is just in reference to when we're talking about Magboard and Saveboard, and even Dura Panel. Where does XCEM Alpha Panel fit in that category?
Sorry, Shiva. I'm not. I don't spend that much time in a coalface. There's some really smart architects that work with me. You need to talk to Jade at Breed. She's the one that's done all the research on this. Yeah, sorry, I don't know. I'll defer to your better judgment on that, Shiva. Sorry.
And I reckon I'm going to know the answer to this, but how do you feel personally we are doing as a nation? And where do you feel we can improve most and quickest to adopt the best possible outcomes moving forward? Well, I think you've actually just done a whole presentation on it.
Yeah, well, I think that we've got to decide, right? Either we need to decide at the polling booth. So you all get your opportunity. If you want big government to solve our carbon problem, then put self-interest aside and vote for the government of the day that is going to do the most for climate. If that's not going to happen and we don't get the government that's going to do the most for climate in power, then you get to decide whether you want to take personal action on that. And I think that all the people that are looking at this webinar have all decided to take personal action. And I think that you can decide how you want to do that in your personal life, but how can you make the most impact? And so in your own personal life, obviously you can eat less meat. You could drive an EV. It's pretty tough with a work vehicle, you could fly less, you can do all of those things. You can electrify your own home. You can buy 100% green power for your own home. But interestingly, you could have way more impact in the work that you do, because every home that you build, every project that you work on, you can have impact. So you can scale your impact well beyond most other people, because most other people can only impact their own lives. But you can impact your own life, and then you can take all of your knowledge and impact it on everyone else's. So yeah, I think that we're doing terribly as a nation. And I think that the failure of our government to lead as a wealthy nation leaves it up to us as individuals and as businesses. And so I think it's incumbent on us, if we give a shit about, the planet, society, people at the edges of, society, then I think that we should all do our bit. And I think that you all are. So keep it up, please.
While cork and hemp are not being produced in any commercial quantities in Australia at the moment, can they be considered low embodied carbon if they are having to travel from Europe or America?
Yeah, well, so the EPD will tell us, what the embodied carbon is. So when we run a life cycle assessment, the Carbon Reduction Institute measures that for us. And it depends how it gets here, right? Do we fly the cork over because the builder hasn't ordered it early enough? Has it come on a ship to Perth and then on a semi-trailer from Perth to here? or has it come on a train, or has it come on a ship to Port Melbourne, you know, with relatively low carbon in terms of transit miles? So it's definitely, like, obviously local materials. Really good question, actually. Specify local wherever possible. Again, my friend Joost, this incredible inspirational thinker, is working with the hemp supplier and manufacturer in Pakenham. So if we can get hemp locally, that's awesome. But the cork is such an incredible product in terms of how positive it is for carbon. While we do have embodied carbon in transport costs, it's still coming out in our life cycle assessments well ahead of putting in, you know, locally manufactured, you know, I don't know, steel, you know, I don't know. So yeah,
Can't help but, like,
yeah.
I was going to say, I can't help but feel that hemp is one of those projects that's just kind of bubbling away, one of those products that is bubbling away just under the surface at the moment, which is just about to hopefully take off. Because I do know of a few local farmers who, you know, they're trying to grow this stuff in commercial quantities. So fingers crossed they get some legs in government funding, because it would be amazing if we could get that locally.
Well, Hamish, you was just telling me that the hemp crop can go from zero to harvest in 90 days, and that you can plant it on a fallow field. So you run wheat on your field for 9 months, and then you put hemp on there to replenish your soil. So it's good for the soil. And so it's good for the soil. It's good for fixing carbon into the soil. And then the top of the hemp is harvested, but the root system of the hemp is left in the soil, which fixes carbon back in the soil. So it's incredible. You can use it as a dual crop cycle, and super fast. So you've got a different revenue stream for a wheat farmer. Like, it's incredible, right? And super, super fast. A great carbon sequester, you know, totally renewable. Yeah, it's a pretty good story.
We've actually had Joe Diallo from Hemp Build Company on our webinar before, talking about hemp. So if you haven't checked it out, everyone, check that out. This is for Marcella and Ben. Do you have a protocol for disposal of decommissioned appliances?
Yeah, I can tell that, March. Yes, we do. Yeah, we take them all to a scrap recycler, so we can drop them off there generally for free, and they will use that scrap metal and dispose of that for us. Same with the hot waters. The old hot water units do that as well. They depack, or they take out the copper and recycle that, and recycle the sheet metal. We also, with our solar installer now, Jed, who you know from Jedlek, Hamish, he actually recycles old solar panels as well. So they break those down, they recycle the aluminium, and they recycle, you know, all the cells, and they break that down and they make them into like a composite board as well. So if you're looking for like a backing of a battery to get your fire rating, you can reuse this old composite panel from old solar panels as well. But yeah, we scrap everything and recycle it.
Yeah, I've been chatting with Jed about getting him to come on a webinar. Hopefully we'll lock him in for next year. Now, I just got one more question, and it's just about the refrigerant in the heat pumps. And it has come up a couple of times before. So what are we looking for when we're looking at a AC? Because, you know, not all ACs are equal. What are we looking for when we're putting an AC in our home? You can throw it to anyone.
Well, yeah, if I can talk to what we specify at Breathe, which is it has to have a greenhouse warming potential gas of less than 670. You know, which sounds high, but interestingly, we never used to specify, or try not to specify, aircon 10 years ago, because the greenhouse warming potential in refrigerants 10 years ago was 11,000, right? 11,000 times worse than carbon dioxide. But we do know, obviously, you know, Reclaim have got a CO2 heat pump, and you know, which is basically a 1-to-1, so it's 670 times better. But I think that for us, you know, like if we're trying to specify something mainstream for an apartment building where we need to specify 300 of these things, we need to, you know, solve that. For us at Breathe, it's, yeah, we look for a maximum GWP of 670.
And Ben and March, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's just important to note. The refrigerant is something that obviously is sealed in the pipework or in the unit. So it's not leaking. It's not going into the atmosphere. During operation. It's only at the end of life when you should be putting it into into a canister when you decommission it, and then just repump it back into a new appliance. So yeah, it's not going to be leaking refrigerant during the operation. I just wanted to make that point. But yeah, still something definitely to be considered.
There's just one more question, then I'll wrap up, because we are sort of knocking on the door at 6 o'clock. Do electric hot water systems have any increased value if they can be used as a kind of battery storage of excess solar PV production?
Well, yeah, look, I think absolutely. So it's really interesting, the energy market, which is why I'm a big advocate for a battery with a VPP, a virtual power plant. So if you think about, how can we play? One is to electrify everything, and the other thing is buy 100% green power. And the idea of buying 100% green power is to decarbonize the electricity grid, or to use market forces to get the generators like AGL to invest in large scale solar or wind. The great thing about, and you're absolutely right, Hamish, the great thing about using a heat pump hot water system and then setting it to run at a particular time. So again, Stable Eltron comes with a switch, which you can, basically you can get it optioned up to run when the solar is running. So it's a pretty simple bit of tech. But so while the solar is running, you're heating your water and you're not paying peak demand solar, peak demand electricity to heat that up. You can store that for 24 hours or as long as you want, and then reuse that. So you could time it exactly so that you're buying either during the middle of the day when power is cheap because of all the solar generation, or at nighttime, during off-peak times. And it actually doesn't just help with your bill, it also helps with grid stability, because it shifts all of our load out of those peak demand times when people are generally having showers in the morning or the evening. So it's a really, really smart question. So absolutely, get you a heat pump and then also set it to run either in the middle of the day if you've got solar, or at night if you're buying off-peak.
Great answer. Thank you. Look, I'm going to wrap it up because we are past 6 o'clock. Jeremy, Marcella, and Ben, thank you so much for giving up your time today and sharing your wealth of knowledge and experience with us. A massive thank you for everyone for joining us tonight. A big shout out to Sustainability Victoria, who are one of our founding platinum sponsors. Don't forget, you can listen to episode 23 of our podcast. Again, all of this information can be found on www.thesba.com.au. Simon and Brian catch up with, I think, the GOAT in the passive house space, Mr. Burkhard Hansen, founder and managing director of Carbon Life. This is going to be our last webinar for the year. So a massive thank you to everyone who comes along to our little webinars every month. I do see the usual suspects come along to support us. I've had a lot of fun hosting them. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching them and getting a whole bunch of information out of them. Again, remember, these webinars all sit on the sba.com.au. There's also a heap of other amazing information on there that is completely free. So if you're wanting something to do over Christmas, jump on the sba.com.au, listen to the webinars, listen to the podcasts, and just have a deep dive into the content that's on there. If you do love what we do, you can still become a gold and silver sponsor. As I said, we really appreciate all your support, and we want to continue to do this for you guys and continue to deliver this information for you guys for free. So we do appreciate any support that we can get for this, for the Sustainable Builders Alliance. Looking into next year, we have some really, really exciting things coming up. I can't talk about them too much just yet because it's still kind of getting worked through. But we are going to be continuing with our monthly webinars and our podcasts. But we're going to be having a heap more live events, and this is most likely going to be in a space in Brunswick where we're going to be partnering with some pretty big players. As I said, I wish I could tell you more, but I'm just going to have to wait for that to all be sorted out. But I'm hoping to have some information to you guys before the end of the year, because I've got a lot of planning to do over the Christmas break for that one. Again, thank you, Jeremy, Ben, and Marcella, and thank you for everyone for joining us today. I will get this up on YouTube and across to the sba.com.au over the next week or so. Again, thank you, everybody. And if I don't talk to you guys, have a great Christmas.
Thanks, Haim.
Thank you.
See ya. Thank you. Bye.